Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have the misfortune, I think, that I missed most of that introduction because I was outside having this device attached. So I shall have to rely upon generosity and goodwill to assume that it was good. But I'm sure it was. I heard at the end you reeling off some of the jobs that I'd got fired from. I've waited a long time. I grew up in the 1980s. One of my favorite television programs was, of course, Dallas. The plotting, the scheming, the doing down of others, the destroying people of talent who are a threat. I have to say it was a perfect preparation for a life in politics. But I've waited a long time to be in Texas and stand before a group and be able to say, howdy. Howdy. My friends, I thought what I would do today is talk a little bit in general terms about what brought me into politics and what I believe, and we can go into, if you want, as more detailed policy and technical questions later. I love speaking to younger people. Every Friday when I can get to my constituency in Bournemouth, which is rarer these days because I'm often now overseas, I visit a school. I have two universities in my own constituency, Bournemouth University and the Arts University, Bournemouth. And every year I attend the international commencement ceremony when international students begin their courses at Bournemouth. And the reason I enjoy spending time with younger people is I remember the generosity of older politicians when I was growing up and nurtured that ambition to step forward and serve. In politics and in life, there are no final victories. And it is up to each generation anew to make the case, to do their best, to act always remembering that we are but mere custodians. And I'm conscious every day as I walk around the Palace of Westminster, the House of Commons, seeing statues and busts and paintings of people who are now long forgotten, but who in their day had that same heavy moral responsibility that rests upon the shoulders of contemporary politicians to do the best for their fellow members of mankind. I've just been for a whistle-stop tour of President H.W. Bush's library, George H.W. Bush's library, and I remember meeting him in 2007 near Winchester in Hampshire. He used to come almost every year to fish on the banks of the River Test. And he used to stay in a hotel called the Lainston House. And I received a call one week in 2007 from a very dear friend of mine who was private secretary to Margaret Thatcher for the last 22 years of her life. And Mark said to me, "Where are you on Friday, Conor?" I said, "Well, I'm actually at home. I'm in Southampton. I've got the day off." He said, "Come up to Winchester." He said, "Lady T's there. We're down doing some events for the 25th anniversary of the Falklands War. Come and join us for lunch." So I rocked up and I noticed, unusually, a armoured 4x4 with the engine running. And a couple of blokes, you guys don't do this subtly, with squiggly things in the ear and the dark glasses. A bit odd. And I walked on, and then there were three of them with the engines running, and about 12 blokes with the squiggly things and the dark glasses. And there were a couple of snipers on the roof. Well, I thought, this is very odd. Margaret doesn't get anything like this anymore. And then I spotted her driver, a lovely chap called Malcolm. And I went over and said to Malcolm, I said, "What's this all about?" He said, "You'll see when you go inside, Conor." So I went inside. Not only was Margaret there, but President Bush and Mrs. Bush were there. And I had a wonderful lunch and conversation with them. He was one of the most incredible American public servants, a man who genuinely, in everything he did, in his military service, in his diplomatic service, in his political service, and even in his post-presidential life, was constantly giving to others. A real example, and I have to say, you are, I think, blessed to have the opportunity to be studying at a school named in his honour, and to be so close to that incredible exhibition. We've got a new Prime Minister in the United Kingdom. You've obviously heard of them, some of you. You read out that one of the jobs that I had was as Parliamentary Private Secretary in the Foreign Office. That was actually as Parliamentary Private Secretary, basically the Minister's eyes and ears in the Commons and the bag carrier to Boris Johnson when he was Foreign Secretary. And I resigned from government on the same day he did in order to fight Mrs. May's pernicious European deal. And I then helped him in the process of run-up to the leadership election. He's a remarkable man. He, of course, was born in the United States, born in New York. He renounced his American citizenship, not because he wasn't proud to be both British and American, but because he quickly realized that the IRS come after you on your global earnings. Something when he was writing and publishing books, he was rather jealously eyeing the royalties and felt they'd be better in his bank account in London than in the IRS's bank account in Washington. But I can't claim American birth, but I can claim an American education. I was brought up near North London, a place called Hertfordshire, by the Brothers of the Sacred Heart, a group of religious brothers from New England province who came and founded a school in 1955. When I joined it, there were over 50 American brothers teaching in that school. So I do claim some, more than some, American influence on my early life. Margaret Thatcher, who I had the privilege to know well in her later years, I used to spend every Sunday evening with her. She used to talk about coming to the United States. She loved coming to the United States. And she used to say, when you arrive in the United States, you can literally smell the freedom. And I think it's a very good description. This is the land of possibilities, the land of opportunities, the land that is wont to say we can when others say we can't. Mrs. Thatcher always said that politics at its purest is philosophy in action, that the job of the state is to create a system of law-governed liberty where the talents and ambitions of the people can flourish, to create the right framework of law for enterprise. She said, if you get your judgment of human nature right, your politics will follow easily on. At her funeral, by her own decision, the hymn was played and sung, which ended, and soul by soul and silently, her shining bounds increase. Mrs. Thatcher's view of politics was that it was the job of the politician to speak to the deepest instincts of every single individual human being. She chose that hymn deliberately, soul by soul, not group by group or class by class or region by region or in your case state by state, but soul by soul and silently her shining bounds increase. She believed as I believe, as the great American leaders believe, that every individual is born with their own God-given talents and abilities, And it is the job of the state to create the right framework of law for enterprise, to allow the individual to develop those talents and abilities to their maximum. She believed, I believed, President Reagan believed, President Bush believed that every individual was first and foremost motivated by a determination to improve theirs and their family's lot. That people don't go out motivated to work for the state. They want to see that if you take a risk, there's a reward. If you make an effort, there's a return. And if they can see that reward and see that return, they will take the risk and make the effort. The wealth of nations. And remember, Adam Smith spoke of the wealth of nations as well as the wealth of individuals. The wealth of nations is based on the boundless energies and talents of millions of free people determined to do better for themselves and their families. Now, our political opponents, my political opponents in the United Kingdom, characterize that often as selfishness and greed. But as Mrs. Thatcher said, to such devastating effect in one of her conference speeches, it is quite the reverse. A man may climb Everest for himself, but at the summit he plants his country's flag. In other words, it is individual effort, individual striving, individual determination to do better that creates the collective wealth for a nation to look after those who cannot look after themselves. Now, my friends, I come today to Texas at a very important moment in my country's history. Last Friday evening, I joined colleagues and friends and the Prime Minister, who's both a colleague and a friend, in number 10 Downing Street to mark that moment at 11 p.m. GMT, when the United Kingdom formally ceased to be a member of the European Union. I hope an American audience can not merely understand, but can empathize with what my country is doing. Yours is quite literally the only country in the world that was literally born in freedom. And what we are doing in the United Kingdom is not all that dissimilar to what you did many years ago when you decided that you wanted to be a self-governing, independent country whose people elected the people who made the rules that the citizens were compelled to obey. That's what we're doing. We are re-emerging after over 45 years as a single member state of the European Union as an independent nation state. In the words of T.S. Eliot, to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. And to quote one of Mrs. Thatcher's favourite quotes, that which thy fathers bequeathed to thee, earn it anew if thou wouldst possess it. We are earning anew in the United Kingdom our self-governance and our independence. And that is why I was determined, in the first days after the United Kingdom formally left the European Union, that I would firstly come to the United States as a Minister for International Trade on behalf of Her Majesty's government. Because I see the great alliance between the United Kingdom and the United States as being an enduring force for good in the world. And you are, the United States is, our number one priority for a new comprehensive free trade agreement. And I didn't want to come to the easy places, the predictable places. I could have gone to Washington. I quite like Washington, believe it or not. I like it as a city. I'm not necessarily talking about all that necessarily goes on there. I could have gone to New York. I could have met all the liberal people who would have told me that Brexit was a terrible mistake. I could have gone to LA. I quite like LA as well, particularly when you get into Simi Valley and see the Reagan Library. But I wanted to come to one of the places where the opportunity is greatest, where the confidence is strongest. This amazing state of Texas, growing at twice the national speed of the of the United States economy as a whole. A state, my friends, a state that if it were a country would have the 10th largest economy in the world. The oil and gas state, traditionally, but now the energy state. A state leading the way, creating the path, not walking a well-trodden one, treading a new one in diverse energy supply, renewable and solar. A state where the opportunities, because of the synergy between the UK and Texas, where the opportunities are vast. I wanted to come as a declaration of intent that our withdrawal from the European Union is not the United Kingdom pulling up the drawbridge. It is the United Kingdom reaching out again, recapturing our ancient instincts as a maritime trading global nation. It's what the Prime Minister quite rightly calls global Britain. The links between our two economies are huge. Oil and gas, tech, AI, advanced manufacturing, music, the arts, entertainment. From BAE Systems and Rolls-Royce in aerospace to Balfour Beatty in construction, Babcock International Infrastructure Management, and any one of the numerous high-tech British businesses working in the hydrocarbons industry. The scale of the trade between the United Kingdom and the US is over £220 billion last year, and that was up 13% on 2018. That, my friends, is all those individuals striving to do better, improve theirs and their families' lot, and creating the national wealth between our two great countries. We, as a small country, 65 million people, still punch way above our weight in the international communities. We offer a highly skilled, dynamic, and flexible workforce, underpinned by a truly world-class education system, boasting 4 of the top 10 universities on the planet. We're a world leader in science and research, ranked in the top 5 economies for innovation in the world last year, due to the quality and ambition of our research and development base. We're home to the City of London, Europe's undisputed financial capital and the biggest global hub for cross-border banking, giving firms the access to finance they need to grow and diversify their businesses globally. We're Europe's tech capital, home to over 70 tech unicorns. At least one company worth $1 billion was created in the UK in every single month of the last year, and we remain the premier destination in Europe for venture capital. The UK is home to more than half of the European, Middle Eastern and African corporate headquarters of American-owned firms. My friends, the opportunities for our two countries to do so much more together is almost limitless. Texas is special to the UK. The United States is special. The special relationship, we talk a lot about the special relationship. We believe it's special. But whether it's special or not, it's pivotal. Economically, politically, culturally, socially, financially. As Winston Churchill said, on the lawn of the White House during the dark days of the Second World War, he said, "So long as our two great nations stand together, we need fear no one, and we need fear nothing. My friends, we may not face anything like the threat that we did in those years, but I believe those words are an enduring description of the special bonds between our two great peoples. And I am honoured to be here today to pay tribute to the United States as our staunchest, most long-standing friend and ally, and to submit to you that you get such a lot of help from a little country called the United Kingdom. And long may it be so. Thank you very much. Cool. Should we do some,
Thank you very much
do
for
some
those
questions?
very inspirational comments. If Texas were its own country,